My name is Kathleen Gilje, and this is an installation called Susanna and the Elders Restored. It's a story of a young woman, Artemisia Gentileschi, the most famous woman painter of the Renaissance, who at 17 years of age in 1610 painted the biblical story of Susanna and the Elders, which is a story of sexual abuse. When she painted this painting, she herself was experiencing sexual abuse and ultimately rape. And what's fascinating about the story is how similar these two stories of sexual abuse, how similar they are. In this installation, I recreated the painting of Susanna and the Elders by Artemisia Gentileschi, but first, under the painting, in lead white, and I use lead white because it is picked up by the X-ray, I did the story of her own rape. I told her own story. And in the trial notes, when she talks about the rape, she talks about the violence, her scream, and the knife. But let's just take a moment now and quickly review the story of Susanna and the Elders, the apocryphal story of Susanna and the Elders. Susanna is the beautiful wife of a wealthy and prominent Jew. The elders, who were part of the community, were attracted to Susanna and they wanted to seduce her, so they followed her to her bath and they sprang on her and demanded her sexual submission, threatening her, accusing her of an adulterous relationship with a young man if she didn't submit. She refused. There was a trial. With their testimony, she was convicted and sentenced to death. And at the very last moment, the young Daniel came forward and said she was convicted on false witness, and that basically he interviewed the two elders separately, and they gave two different stories about the alleged act. One said it occurred under an oak, the other said under a mastic. So Susanna was proven innocent. Artemisia Gentileschi was the daughter of Orazio Gentileschi, who was also a famous painter. She grew up in a world of painters. Her own mother died when she was 13, so she also grew up in a world of males. Her father, her four brothers who were younger, and all her father's friends. She, at one point, Orazio hired a woman, Tuzia, who came into the household to be Artemisia's companion and protector in this world. But she was betrayed by everybody. She was betrayed by Tuzia, who gave access to Tassi to enter the home anytime he wanted. She was betrayed by her father's friends, Cosimo Quarli, but this is probably Quarli here, and who had several times attempted to rape her and said he was her daughter. And by Agostino Tassi, who, unlike usually we see with elders, we see that he looks like a younger man there, who was a painter and who worked with her father, Orazio, on frescoes, doing the architecture, illusionistic architecture. One time, in the trial note, she said that Tassi entered, and she was painting a portrait of Tuzia and her young son, who was posing as a Madonna and child. And Tassi told Tuzia to leave, and he took Artemisia's palette and brushes and threw them around and said, "Too much painting, no more painting." He grabbed her, brought her into the bedroom, and he raped her. Afterwards, she took a knife from the drawer and she threw it at him, wounding him slightly and cried, at which point he said to her, "I'll marry you," which at that time was a way to, I guess it was a way of taking away the situation of being raped. She did not know that he had had a history of raping women, that he had tried to have his wife killed, and that he had been in jail many times for fights. And so when, in the end, his character proved to be what it was, and he didn't marry her, her father, Orazio, took the case to trial in 1612. At the trial, there were many witnesses, but Artemisia was one of them, and so that's why we have this description, detailed description of the rape. They used they tortured her, and they used what they call sibili, or thumb screws. And they tightened these thumb screws around her finger, and at one point, I guess in pain, she turns to Tassi and said, "Is this the ring you give me, and these are your promises?" But as a painter, I think how frightening it must have been to have these squeezed around my fingers, potentially, possibly breaking my fingers, and endangering her gift, the gift that she had in her hands, that she would be able to make paintings in the future. Tassi defended himself in the trial by saying that Artemisia slept with many men. He called her a whore, and he said she was a woman of ill repute. The judge did not believe him, and he lost the trial. He lost the trial the same way the elders lost their trial, ultimately. He was told to leave Rome and not to return. But he did within a few months, and he once again befriended Orazio. Artemisia was also forced to leave Rome, and she went to Florence. She was also forced into a marriage. Her rape trial was famous, and it preceded her, and she had to endure humiliating whispering. She had been dishonored as a woman, but she had gained the freedom of a man to work. She had great talent. She went on to do great works, important clients, important patrons, and success. Let's take a moment now and look at the X-ray, because this is Artemisia's portrait, Artemisia's image of the rape. Once again, the scream. We see an elder pulling the hair back, pulled back. We see the violence, the arms flailing, what she described was the violence of the rape. And we see the knife that she said she had in the drawer that she took out, and that's how she wounded Tassi. Let's go for a moment to the painting. This painting is under the Susanna and the Elders. And we can see that the lead paint underneath, which is dry, has absorbed the upper layer, which is oilier. So we begin to see a faint image. In conservation, we call this image a pentimento. This image is the scream, the open mouth, the teeth, the head pulled back, the pain. Follow the neck down, we see the hand that is about to throw the knife at her violator, Tassi. In Susanna and the Elders, by Artemisia Gentileschi, it's not about violence so much, but the threat of violence, the threat of rape. In the underpainting, here, which we see, in the X-ray, we see the violence. That's it.
When did you do this art project?
This project was done in 1998. It was shown in 2000, I believe, at the National Museum of Women in the Arts. It was then shown at the Contemporary Art Museum in St. Louis and at the Hood Museum at Dartmouth. And this year, 2011, 400 years after Artemisia Gentileschi's rape, it has been acquired by the Addison Museum.